What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All NBA Show, part of the All City Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler. Legs, I was so excited for the Olympics. I was excited for it for like a month and a half. I kept talking about it. It surpassed my expectations. That's how good it was. And I am like catching my breath after a great week of basketball.
I completely agree. I think, going into, I always look forward to it, but I also don't have the same level of expectations that I do necessarily maybe going into the NBA playoffs or whatever. And I kind of felt that way this time too. And it blew it away. It blew my expectations out of the water, my entertainment value. I think I might have enjoyed this as much as any, probably since the Dream Team, the original Dream Team in 1992, just because that was such a spectacle. And, the guys that were involved with that team and the way that I viewed those particular players on that team and the first time sending pros, I don't know that anything can match my anticipation for that. This, as far as just flat out entertainment value, and not just Team USA's games, some of the other games too, it absolutely more than lived up to everything that they possibly could have hyped this to be. And I'm actually glad that we got a couple of really close games for Team USA to have to play the way that they did late to win both of those games. I think it just makes it much more interesting to watch and much more interesting to talk about as we're going to do now.
100%, man. There was 8 games in the elimination, and I think 6 of them were fantastic. Like, there weren't bad games in that elimination round, and we're going to talk about a lot of them. We're going to talk about Serbia and France and what we saw from them. We're going to break down Dennis Schroeder's comments and KD's response to those comments later on, because I think they're interesting about what does this Olympics mean and all that. But our top story, and where we're going to spend most of our time, is with Team USA. This was an incredible Team USA. And if you would have told me they had 2 close games, I would have said, well, they probably just didn't live up to their potential. They didn't live up to the hype or what have you. I don't think that's the case. I think some other teams played incredible and pushed them to their limits. And I'm so thankful for it, because the performance that Team USA put on in the semifinal and final was exactly what I think basketball fans wanted to see with Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James. Those guys had to reach their apex, and when they did, it was a sight to behold. So what stood out to you about Team USA's final 2 rounds when you watch those 2 games? We kind of combine them into one talking point.
I like the way you put that right there. I was having this conversation yesterday, and I said what Serbia and France did was force greatness. They forced it out of Team USA. And I think that is what made this something that we're never going to forget, the way that particularly these last 2 games played out. I think the very first thing I think that comes to mind now in summing this up and what we just watched, with a guy like Steph Curry, for me personally, and this is very subjective, Steph Curry for me is the second most entertaining player that I've ever watched in the NBA.
Who's number 1?
Michael Jordan is number 1. Michael Jordan is 1. Steph Curry is 2. In terms of must-see TV and entertainment value, and and he just how unique and what a one-off he is, the way that he plays. And a guy like this that's been doing it as long as he has, just when you think you have seen everything that Steph Curry could possibly do, right, that could blow you away, he goes and does that. If you really think about it now, Adam, that it's over with, it's almost like, well, of course that was going to happen. How else could it happen with a guy like Steph Curry? Like his basketball life has been so blessed. And he talked about it in his interview after the game, like the cool things he's gotten to do, these incredible things he has done individually and these teams he's been on and these moments that he's been a part of. To have that happen, first he has the huge scoring game and they needed all of that against Serbia to survive that game, 36 points, and then comes back and plays great, shoots great in this game. But then the way that he ended the game, it gives you one of Curry's most iconic moments of his career right at the very end of the Olympics with 3 minutes to go in the Olympics. It's almost over, and Steph Curry gives you one of the most iconic moments, not just probably for Steph Curry, but for any NBA player or any
Yep.
player on any basketball platform. That's what he just gave you, the way that he closed that game out and the fact that they win the gold medal to boot. So I think that for me is kind of what I was thinking about. Like, yeah, man, Steph Curry deserved to have this. He deserved to have that moment go down the way that it did because of what he has given the world of basketball and what he's given fans for all these years in terms of entertainment value. He's so compelling. He's so fascinating. He's so skilled. And he had one more of those incredible, iconic moments to deliver on that stage. Finals or NBA playoffs, and he was able to do it. So I think that for me just seemed so fitting for Steph Curry to have that. It's something
Yeah.
that you're never going to forget where you were when you were watching him do that at the end of that game.
What was so cool about it, Steph did not have a great Olympics through the first 4 games, 3 in
No,
pool play,
not
and
at
then
all.
the quarterfinal. He was a little rough. And then you get to that semifinal game, and right away with Serbia, you knew the pressure was higher. Serbia was locked in. They were playing, the energy was all the way up to 11. And you could see that USA was like, okay, this is a pace that's different than the first 4 games that we've played at. But he was the guy that it almost was like he was in a slump because of how easy it was. I know this isn't the
Yeah,
case, but it's what it felt like. He was in a slump because of how easy it was. All of a sudden, the pressure goes up, his focus goes up, and he couldn't miss. And he couldn't miss in that Serbia game. And then you get to the France game, which was the opposite. The Serbia game, they're behind, they're coming back the whole time. The other one is almost more pressure in a way. You're up, and at the very end, France had closed that gap, and you start to get uncomfortable. And Kevin Durant missed a couple shots, LeBron missed a couple possessions, and then you get to the clutch, and it's like, okay, they need 1, maybe 2 baskets, and he hit 4 of them in a row. And the last one he hit is up there with the greatest shots of it that he's ever hit. It was the ultimate
I agree.
exclamation point. It was 87 degrees, almost straight up in the air. 87 degrees, goes that high, hits the rafters and falls in. And to me, it reminded me of Kobe Bryant in '08 when we all wondered if a game gets close, who's going to be the guy that makes the play? And it was Kobe in '08. And this time, LeBron was fantastic. Kevin Durant was fantastic. There was a lot of guys that shined in this tournament for Team USA. But the one time when the game kind of felt like it was in doubt in that final, it was Steph Curry who came away with it. And I just think that's so cool.
So cool. And you know, you're right about the number of contributions. And we're going to talk about some of these other really key things that happened here over these last couple of games. Um, but what's interesting is so LeBron gets MVP of the Olympics, you know, and he deserved it, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
he
It
was
was his
incredible.
team, it was his show. He was great the entire time. Um, so some people I saw trying to, you know, they wanted to come and to, you know, give it to Curry there at the end because of the last 2 games. You got to look at it the totality of the entire
Yeah.
thing. And for me, it was LeBron. I think you probably agree with that. I think he
Yeah.
was the most outstanding player of the Olympics. But what's interesting in both of the last 2 games, Curry in the gold medal game we just talked about, but in the going back to the Serbia game, go back to what I think was the biggest possession of the game. And they come up the floor up 2, and there was no doubt in my mind as they were coming up the floor, I said, this has to go to Kevin Durant. And they ran some action where like Durant sort of screened for Curry, but Curry kind of just curled out of there. Was like, no, go get
Yeah.
it. Durant then popped at the top of the key, caught the ball, and Embiid ran up to set a screen. Durant waved him out, like, no, I don't want any help. He had an amazing crossover. He got the defender all twisted, and they went to like
Classic
a pull
PD.
up 18-footer, right? For to put him up for it. That was the biggest shot of the game. So LeBron in its totality was the best player, and he was awarded that, and he deserved that. But in these 2 key moments, the help that he got from these other 2 all-time great players
Yeah.
and the older players on the team, it was significant to me. It was Durant in the Serbia game, and Embiid kind of triggered the beginning of that run also. We ought to give him
Yeah.
credit because he didn't have a great Olympics, but he played great in the beginning of the surge against Serbia to get them back in the game.
That
And
fourth
then they had
quarter.
contributions all throughout. And then Durant hits the big one. And then this game, there was, yeah, we could pick spots and moments from people, but when it absolutely was, this shot has to be made to win this game. It was Steph Curry that took over it. So you're right. It was cool. And the guy, you know, listen, man, the guy, he deserves it. He's such a role model. The way he conducts himself on and off the floor, the way he's handled himself his entire career, um, everything he's given, and all the memories that he has created for people, he deserved to have that game end the way that it did. And very few guys are going to seize an opportunity like that, where you give every single person watching that event something
Yeah.
they'll carry with them the rest of their lives that love basketball. You're just never going to forget what he did. I agree with you. It was just cool and fitting, and it went to a really good guy and a guy that we admire and look up to, and has had this incredible career. There's one of Steph Curry historically, and he gave you that. So it was absolutely an awesome way to end what was a great Olympic tournament.
Whenever you get a super team or even like a super band and a bunch of different musicians, like famous musicians come together, inevitably somebody shines to the top. There's usually one guy that becomes the face. And what I loved about this one was I really don't know if that's the case. Yes, LeBron, he was the MVP. He was sort of the point guard of this, which was really fun to watch him just kind of be the point guard. But Durant, Steph, and LeBron just share this. This was a rare example where you brought all these guys together, but three people actually shine brighter than everyone else. And if we go to LeBron, he is sort of the captain, the oldest guy, but also the captain of this team. And I just mentioned the point guard play. That's what was so cool about this. LeBron is both, back in his heyday when we were talking about, is he Michael? Is he Magic? What is he? He's kind of both. But this tournament, he almost got to be more Magic than we've ever seen him. He got to be more of just the setup guy, control the game. And when you watch him get to focus on that, he still scored a lot and did a bunch of amazing things. But when he shifted it more to playmaking, it almost made me wish I could go back and rewatch his career if he just tried to be a point guard. It was that fun to watch him orchestrate like that.
Well, it's also, Adam, you think about guys, how they can sometimes have to make a transition later in their career to extend their careers as an impact player, right? We've seen guys do it. You change the way you play. I think Jason Kidd is a great example of it. Jason Kidd was always considered, not a good shooter, streaky at best. Right. And look at what he did at the end of his career, because you loved his defense. You loved his playmaking, the way he made guys better, the way he moved the ball crisply through the air, his vision. But then he turned himself into a pretty reliable three-point shooter at the end of his career and ended up helping you win a championship in that role with Dallas. So, and here you have LeBron, and you're sitting there going, wow, this is a guy that's the all-time leading scorer in the history of the league. And I never looked at him as a guy that put scoring first and still ended up as the all-time leading scorer. It's like, to me, the greatest argument that anybody could make. If you want to make that argument for LeBron James as the GOAT, that's the one. This guy didn't even look at scoring as his primary objective and ended up as the all-time leading scorer. But it's really been, for me, it was always the playmaking. The first time I saw him play, when he played a high school basketball game and we televised it on ESPN, the first thing that stood out to me were these passes he was giving these guys, like these inferior players on his high school team, and the way he was hooking them up with these passes and his vision and seeing things ahead of that. So it's like, you wonder, like, if LeBron, as physically fit as he is, if he can just continue to stay healthy, if he just wants to transition into that role where he doesn't have the demands of getting 25, 30, 35 every night to give his team a chance to win, if he could be on a team like that, that's good enough, they've got enough scoring, man, what would that do to, like, extend his career even longer if you wanted to? Because
he can play. I was joking with somebody the other day. He's going to be the captain in 2028 if he wants it. I mean, probably not. But
you know what? No, you might be right. And we're going to talk a little bit about this in a minute, because there's ESPN came up with a list of like what that team might look like, and it talks about the older guys first, and Durant, Curry, and KD. I mean, Durant, Curry, and LeBron in particular. And it's like, it was almost like dismissive, like he won't be back. And I'm going, wait a minute. We don't know that. Like, this guy is all about, at this point, history, making history and challenges and challenging himself. And just the way he looks physically, and he still has that straight downhill speed. He's still got the strength. He's still got the verticality that he needs. And the other parts, the IQ, the vision, all that stuff, his shooting's better than ever. His IQ has always been there. The vision, like those impact the game that way, but he's still an elite level athlete, and with the speed and the verticality. So if he wants to dial it back a little bit as a scorer, that's less demands, less prep, less stress on his body on a nightly basis, who knows? Maybe he will be around 4 years from now. I would be surprised, but I wouldn't be like blown away. I'd be like, okay, he did it. Most guys you wouldn't think would want to do it. That's really what it comes down to. Do you want to do that for 4 more years and put your body through that? But maybe he's the one off with that, man, because this still comes so easy to him.
Yeah. I was joking with somebody, there's 82 game players and then there's 16 game players. In 4 years, LeBron can at least be a 6 game player. The Olympics is just 6 games, three in the
Right.
full play. That's all you need. I think he'll have energy for that. But the thing we didn't mention about LeBron that was most impressive in 2023 in the Western Conference Finals, he guarded Jokic in game 4 in the second half. And Jokic overcame, Jokic did what he did. He's at the height of his powers. The teams were more balanced in terms of talent, and he did what he did. But I walked away from that series and even the entire run of the Nuggets, and I said, by far, the best defender Jokic faced was LeBron. He played Anthony Davis, he played Bam Adebayo, but LeBron. Now, LeBron couldn't do that for a whole series. He couldn't even do it for a whole game, but he could do it in a stint. He did it in the fourth quarter of that Serbia-USA game, and he was unbelievable. One, it allowed Joel Embiid and Anthony Davis to play the roamer and kind of double the ball and play the passing lanes and protect the rim. But his ability to guard and just play big for a short stretch, to me, might have been the most impressive thing that he did in that entire tournament. Was Jokic's 300 pounds. LeBron matched up for him for 10 solid minutes and did an incredible job.
He also he had some of the most impressive plays he made in this run were defensively with his quick trigger late blocks. Like he had block shots and rim protection in this tournament that he looked like there's no way he's in the play. I mean, guys are at the rim about to release the ball. It looks like it's going to be an uncontested layup, and LeBron jumps second and still gets to these balls. That to me, he had a couple of those in particular where I just kind of yelled out in the moment, like, man, like, you couldn't believe that he got to it. So that's a good point by you. He's so versatile with his strength that you could put him on bigger guys if you have to. He guarded Wembanyama in the fourth quarter of the gold medal game at times, who again, just like dwarfs Embiid, dwarfs Gobert, dwarfs all these guys, AD. It's so ridiculous how much bigger he is than those guys and longer. And yet LeBron still took on that challenge when he had to as well. So I thought it was absolutely fitting. LeBron was named most outstanding player, and he should have been. He was great the entire time. He did whatever was needed on a given night. Steph had a slow start shooting in this tournament, came on obviously incredibly well the last couple of games. KD was very good throughout. Anthony Edwards had some spotty games. I thought Booker was very solid throughout. Embiid wasn't very good overall, but was very good and important in the Serbia game. Bam Adebayo was just solid like he always is. So they got contributions up and down the board, but it was the consistent high level and intensity and leadership and direction that LeBron James gave them. I think that stood out.
Yeah. And we've talked a little bit about KD, but I just want to hit him as well. KD, to me, he's so good at the scoring part of the game. And I still think that he can be, trapped. He doesn't always make great decisions, doesn't do all these things. But on a team like this where you can't trap, he's going to get his spots. You really see how dominant he is when he gets to get one-on-one with guys, how dominant he is as a shooter, how he can make quick decisions with the ball in his hands and get open. And LeBron was the best player. Steph had the crazy finish. Kevin Durant might have been the most consistently spectacular of the three throughout the tournament.
Of all scorers that I've watched in my life, Kevin Durant is the one guy I've always described as you can drop him on the court with any four players in the world at any time, and you don't have to worry about him scoring efficiently. Even when they've added talent to teams he's been on, he can go early in games, not get touches. Like I was looking, I watch Phoenix play now. Like Booker tries to get going like early every night. Like Booker tries to get going. And Durant's just kind of like, oh, I'm not worried about that. I'm going to get mine. I'm going to do it efficiently because I'm that good offensively. He is just so good at blending into whatever it is that's around him because his talent level is off the chart. It's the greatest combination of length, handle, and shooting in one body that this league has ever seen. And as a result, he's the ultimate bailout option on any possession because he's always going to get something good for himself because of that combination of the length, handle to create the space, just enough space that he needs, and then the length to shoot over the top of virtually anyone. And he did it again throughout this tournament. He was just so good offensively in limited opportunities by his standards and what he's used to be that good when your options are so much more limited than they would be in a regular season or an NBA playoff game.
Yeah. The next guy, I'm curious. So we talked about the big three. If you had to pick the fourth guy, who would be the next guy you would want to talk about?
Booker for sure.
Same,
And I
same
thought
for me.
Yeah, and I thought Kerr. I'm glad Kerr. The press conference ended, and he said, none of you asked about Devin Booker, but he was our unsung MVP. I thought it was a great way to
Yeah.
put it because
Yeah.
he again so good every night. And again, this is a voracious shot hunter type player, right? That's how he plays. He's going to go get his. He's going to attack. He's going to go. And now here you go. You ask him, okay, listen, you're not going to get as many opportunities, obviously, on this team. You still have to be efficient, though. Shot great. And I was super impressed with his on the ball defense. His on the ball defense was causing some problems for some of these guards. And his level of intensity and how far out on the floor he was picking guys up and turning them and staying with them defensively. He's not asked to do that every night. And I always thought he plays hard defensively in the NBA. I've always thought Devin Booker plays hard. He's not a guy that
Right.
cheats the game on that end. But obviously, when you're taking, 20 plus shots a night, a lot of nights, and you're asked to get do all
Right.
that scoring, you just can't do it for 82
Yeah.
games like all the time. So in this case, you can. You shorten it down, handful of games, minutes are reduced. You're not going to be doing as much offensively. So then we need you to do that. And he did it willingly. And I thought he stood out. Like his ball pressure was sensational. Anthony Edwards as well, by the way. And I think Evan Fournier is not going to want to see Anthony Edwards anytime soon with some of the issues he had trying to advance the ball against him yesterday. It was kind of amazing because he is an NBA guard and he wanted no part of that. Anthony Edwards was so up in him and in his head. And Booker did a lot of that to some of these guards as well. So I thought Booker, for me, was the guy that didn't get very much attention throughout the tournament, but was so solid every game.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I saw a tweet from him. I ended up retweeting it on Twitter, but somebody said like, oh, someone on Team USA is going to have to just be a defensive player and play their role. And he quote tweeted it and said, I'll do it. And this was a year ago, basically saying,
Yeah.
hey, if that's what's needed, I'll do it. And I got to say, man, I love the way he played. That's exactly how he played. There is a confidence I read into a player when they're willing to do a job that's beneath them. And this is true of people in life, but in basketball, if you're willing to take on and excel at a role that's beneath you, I'm just so impressed by it. And he was. It's like, okay, I got to pick up full court. I'm going to do it. Did it at a high level. When the shots came to him, he took them. When they didn't, he didn't force it. I loved Booker, and for sure he was my fourth guy. I think the next guy I would talk about is Anthony Davis.
Yeah,
He was
agreed.
he was great as well in this one. And just when he's another guy who, like Kevin Durant, is a guy that when you put him around talent like this, so where he gets to focus on what he does defensively, which is everything defensively, he just shines so much. And I thought that his defense throughout the entire tournament, he just had made plays that were amazing.
He had, I think, the biggest impression in terms of just size and physical force at times. Like particularly some of the stuff he'd get around the rim, some of the
Yeah.
lobs, the putbacks. He imposed himself physically at times when they absolutely had to have it. And in a different way than Bam can, in a different way than Embiid can. Anthony Davis, because of the combination of size, strength, and then just mobility, there are things that he could do that are a little bit different than those guys. And there were times they needed it, and he got it. Very timely putbacks, timely catches on difficult passes that he was able to finish. He showed you his just natural raw talent. And I thought he played very hard throughout the entire thing, as all of them should, especially in these kind of minutes these guys are playing. They should be playing as hard as they can every second. And I thought he did. So I thought Anthony Davis was another good one to point out. I thought Drew Holiday was actually very solid throughout as well. I thought Drew Holiday was very good. His
Hit his
defense
shot.
is not, it's not something that's going to show up all the time on highlights, but he had some decent scoring games, but then his defense was just always so good. And his activity with his hands was so good. So, up and down the roster, man, they got contributions from everybody except really Tyrese Halliburton and very limited amount of Jason Tatum. So those two guys are taking a little bit of a different experience from this, I think, than everybody else. But they're top guys. And look, the top three guys, the iconic players of their generation. That's what this story was about.
Yeah.
And the way it unfolded in the last two games in particular. It was literally like some sort of a script that you would write and how you'd want it to go for those three guys,
He really
not
was.
knowing if they'll ever have that opportunity again.
It really was, and that's what made it special. LeBron called them the Avengers, and it feels right. It's actually a fitting name. Usually I would think something like that's corny, but the way it played out, I'm like, that was the Avengers. That was the Avengers coming together, and they all played their role to their best. I want to talk about the Tatum piece of this though, because I do think it's interesting. We did the last show we did was after game one, and you, to my surprise, were upset at Steve Kerr for not playing him. You go through this tournament and he played spot minutes, but it was clear that Tatum, coming off of a championship, being the best player on the team winning a championship, it's clear that he was just not one of the top 9 guys. And that every minute he got was almost token minutes of like, all right, we
Yeah.
have a little bit of comfort here, so we'll put you out there. Here's what I was thinking about with Tatum. Tatum to me almost reminds me of Carmelo Anthony in some ways, in that he was this great individual scorer, and you wondered what would it be like, on a team. Melo never really adjusted his game, and I think Tatum did. This last year, I'm so impressed with him because I felt like he played the role, and the Celtics became more of a team than a player led, him and then a supporting cast. It became more balanced. For it, he wins a championship, but it's almost like his reputation has taken a hit. We're in such a weird timeline that you win a title, you do everything right, and now people are clowning him for not being in the mix on Team USA and not winning Finals MVP. What do you make of Tatum and not playing, and also just this idea of he did what we wanted so many players like him in the past to do? He actually did it, won, and he's getting clowned.
Well, first of all, nobody has any business clowning him for this. It's completely out of his hands. Completely
Yeah.
out of his hands. Now, if he played good minutes and he really struggled, and maybe you thought that contributed to them, really being tested in the last couple of games, okay, that's typical. You're going to get criticized for that. This was completely taken out of his hands. I don't know why he would be clowned for it. For me, this was a premeditated decision going in that this is what was going to happen to Jason Tatum. And I just don't get it. I don't get it. You can't justify it in any way based on matchups or anything that you want to say. The 2 Serbia games in particular, just those are bad matchups for Jason Tatum. Like, we can't figure out a way to play him. I look at it like this. You put a team together like this, and going into it, resumes matter. Status in the league at the time matters, at least going in. Now, look, if he plays the first couple of games and he plays 20 minutes in a couple of games and goes, 1 for 9 and 2 for 11, and his plus minus is bad, and you decide, hey, man, I got to shorten the rotation, and I'm going to go more with these lineups, or something else catches your eye. That's a little bit easier to explain. When you go in and right off the bat, he's a DNP, you have made a determination that somehow Jason Tatum, for whatever reason, isn't a guy that can adapt and do some of the things that these other guys that are playing could. And that's the part I haven't. It's going to literally burn me probably for the rest of Jason Tatum's career. I'll never understand what just happened to Jason Tatum. I just won't understand it.
Do you think he got a fair shake? Do you think he got a
all league? 3 times all league MVP votes year after year, a championship, and he's the guy that's out. When you look at some of the other guys on this roster that all got a little bit of burn in every game except Halliburton, who would, if you ranked the 12 players, I would have said Halliburton probably would be 11th and Derek White 12th, because Derek White joined the team at the very end. But okay, so Halliburton I expected to be limited in minutes. That wasn't a surprise to me. The Tatum thing really was shocking to me that that's how it played out, and that he is coming away from this probably feeling, look, he handled it so well for the most part. I thought he was ticked off the first game in the second half. His body, he looked mad. After that, there was a lot of talk about that. I think he's probably, kind of became aware, like, hey, man, a lot of eyeballs are on me, no matter what, how I'm handling this. I thought he handled it with a lot of class. He was into it. He was supporting his teammates these last few games. So I thought he handled it as well as he could. But to leave there with the medal around your neck and knowing that you didn't really contribute as much to that as you should have and could have, and it wasn't anything to do with how you played, that's got to be very difficult for him. I'm sorry. That medal is going to feel different, in my opinion. That medal is going to feel different to Jason Tatum when he has that in a frame or wherever he puts that on a wall in his home. That's going to feel different than it does to LeBron and Curry and Durant and Devin Booker and, Bam Adebayo and Anthony Davis and Embiid even. It's going to feel different to him.
Yeah.
And is it going to be a little bit hollow there because he doesn't feel like he contributed all that much to it? So I personally didn't get it. His resume dictated he should have been in the rotation in the beginning. and somebody else that was playing shouldn't have been. And if you didn't play well, you make a change. I get it, man. You don't have a lot of time to figure this out. But to make that determination before game one, Adam, that's very, very surprising. And I'm curious to see, Jason Tatum doesn't seem like the kind of guy maybe that's gonna like get too upset over it and carry it, into whatever. Every time he sees Steve Kerr, is he gonna see red the rest of his career? I don't know if he's got that kind of personality type.
Well, what's interesting is we all know there's the disease of more. You win a championship, and then the next one year has to be a little different. You want more accolades. Well, Jaylen Brown, we know, is upset about being left off this team. And now Tatum was on the team but didn't play. And it is going to be at least one thing. We're far away from really knowing how it plays out. But I am curious to see just how content the Celtics are going into next year, because both guys, both Brown and Tatum, are probably have a right to say, like, all right, this year I want more. I want a little more respect or what have you. And we'll see how they navigate that dynamic. Speaking of which, Tatum, you look at just, okay, there's a lot of old guys on this Team USA, and there's another Olympics in 4 years. You would think he would be the headline, but even he is now not sure. Okay, am I committed to this thing long term? Does this leave a bad taste in my mouth? If we look ahead to 2028, Steph, LeBron, and KD, you said you wanted to talk about them not. I think they're probably done. This felt like a last dance type of situation.
Yeah.
But if we move on to the next one, let's just go through guards real quick, because I think the best way to do this is to break it down by position.
Yeah.
If you look at guards for Team USA, I think Anthony Edwards and Devin Booker feel like locks if they want it. And I imagine both of them will want it. They'll be in their absolute prime still. Anthony Edwards, especially in his prime. Those two guys are the start. And after that, I think Jalen Brunson might be the next most likely guy. What do you think after Ant and Booker in terms of guards?
Yeah, I think Brunson would be. Look, Halliburton's on the team and he's a very young
Halliburton.
player. So you would think Halliburton would be, maybe another guy. Okay, he'll be back, but you don't know. Based on this experience, you don't know. I'm not saying maybe that he wouldn't want to do it, because maybe he'll think, hey, next time I will play more, whatever. I'm just saying there's no telling now what could happen over the next 4 years for him. Jalen Brunson, to me, if he's healthy 4 years from now, that seems like that would be a lock as the next guy, the next guard that you would add to this team, to go with Booker and Edwards for sure. Another name I think that is going to have a great chance by the time we get there would be Tyrese Maxey. I think Maxey,
I had him on my list too.
Yeah, and I could just see him. He just seems like a guy that 100% unfazed by the entire stage and the moment. He just doesn't seem like he's affected that way. His psyche's very strong. He plays with a certain level of joy. I think that he would be a great fit for them. So I think those two guards for me are two of the guys I'd put at the top of the list for guards.
Beyond that, you've got De'Aaron Fox, Jaylen Brown, Donovan Mitchell, Ja Morant. I think those are the guys that you look at and say, okay, those probably guys. I mean, if somebody's hurt or not into it that year, the point being, Team USA, I think, is going to be really stacked at guard. I don't think they have anybody there that looks, like Steph Curry, but everybody else, I think they're going to have depth at guard. If you go to the wings, well, you start with Jason Tatum, because again, you just would expect at that point, he might be the best player on Team USA should he decide to come. But after that, the wing depth is actually kind of weak for Team USA. I had Jalen Williams, Scotty Barnes, Cade Cunningham, Trey Murphy, Brandon Miller, and Cooper Flagg as names as wings. That list is all good players, don't get me wrong, but they're not the like Kevin Durant, LeBron James caliber stars that we're used to. What do you make of that crop of wings? And was there somebody I forgot?
Paolo Banchero, would he be?
I had him as a big, but you're right. He's kind of a forward, so he could count.
Yeah, to me, he's like a forward because he handles the ball a lot. He's, the way he plays. He's got a chance. I mean, Paolo Banchero, and a lot of that's going to hinge on, I think, how good the Magic are over the next few years. They took a huge leap last year, and there's no reason to think they're not going to continue to ascend. They're going to be in the mix in the East, and as long as they're like relevant, he's relevant. He's playing playoff games every year. He's going to have shots at all league teams. He's going to have shot at all-star games. His name and his age will factor in, I think, when this team rolls around the next time. He'd be an interesting one. What about Chet Holmgren?
So then you go to bigs, right? Okay, so I'll just put the bigs out there. Bam Adebayo should be in his prime still. Embiid and Anthony Davis, both have, been injured a little bit. Do they retire? Because they'll be like 34, I believe, 34, 35.
I don't see Embiid doing it again. I'm not sure I'd see, and I don't know that I'd see AD doing it again.
They're
I
on
could
the
see
cusp.
Bam. I could see Bam running it back.
Yeah. And then after that, you've got Chet Holmgren, Mobley, and Zion as bigs. Those would be the guys. But it's just so different, right? Like Embiid and Anthony Davis, those two monsters. Bam is phenomenal. He earned his Olympian mark, I think, from you this tournament. But Chet, Mobley, they remind me more of the Tyson Chandler mold. Like sometimes
Yeah.
Team USA centers are just defensive guys, and then they
All
don't
right.
really do anything
I
else.
got another name for you then. I was thinking about because a lot of the names we're mentioning now were put together, this list that ESPN put together and put out there. And it's pretty obvious. So we're talking about those names. What about Jaren Jackson Jr.?
Yeah, that's a good one. I could see it.
Because he's an elite defender, rim
Yeah.
protector, but he could also step out and score. Like he could step out and shoot the ball from the three and can, create different kind of spacing if you wanted to play a second big because of his
Yeah.
ability to step out and shoot the basketball. And he's going to be certainly young enough. We'll see what happens with Memphis over the next few years and where his profile in the league is. But he like, I look at a guy like Bam and I look at a guy like him and I go, okay, what's the difference between the two? Jaren Jackson Jr., he's probably a little bit longer. He's got better shooting range, deeper shooting range, and he's a big time rim protector. Bam fits in really well with these teams. He's shown his value with that, obviously, his ability to accept the role and all those things. But I just looking at the list of players that were put down, I was trying to see if there's anybody else out there that I think at least deserves a mention. He was one of the guys I thought of.
I think that you look at that and say Team USA's guard depth is going to be phenomenal, as good as expected. The wings and the bigs, though, are a question mark to me. This was such a perfect team, a perfect storm of
Yeah.
Team USA. It's probably the best one since the Dream Team. And it had so many great players. And we saw how competitive it was. A one and done tournament, single elimination, 10-minute quarters, anything can happen. And I just look at that one and I go, I think it's going to be a meaningful step down from what we saw this year, which I guess is to be expected, but maybe significantly so, honestly, with the wing depth and the center depth.
A big factor in all of this, for as far as beyond the guards, is going to be what happens with Cooper Flagg. Cooper Flagg has a chance to be a great player. He'll most likely be the first pick in the draft next year. By that time, that Olympics roll around, he'll have 3 years under his belt in the NBA. So there's no telling like what Cooper Flagg could be. And like just how dominant and how versatile, and he plays both ends of the floor as well. But I think has potentially much greater upside than some of the guys we're talking about offensively. So he's a big factor in all of this, depending on his growth and how quickly he gets to that top tier.
Oh, somebody in the chat says Derek Lively. I agree. He fits the mold of, the type of guy. If you're not getting the superstar type guys, the rim rollers, shot blockers, rebounders, he fits that mold for ssure. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, I want to get into some conversation about the other teams that impressed: Serbia, France, Australia. Maybe we'll even talk a little bit about Canada, who did not impress, and why they fell apart. So we'll get into some non-Team USA teams on the other side. First, tell you about Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all your outdoor adventures. They even have ski goggles, by the way. Ski season not too far away for those of you that indulge. They have ski goggles for you. Bass fishing goggles, I believe that's what they look like. I don't know what you call them, but they look like the type of ones you'd go bass fishing with. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style, and they probably have a style in your favorite team's colors. Maybe you're trying to get something to wear to the stadium for football season. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code AC35 for 35% off of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. I also want to tell you about BetterHelp. When life goes fast, it's important to take a moment to celebrate your wins and to make adjustments for the rest of the year. Therapy can help you take stock of the progress that you've achieved already or set goals for the next 6 months. Maybe you're at the intersection of a big life decision, a career change, or maybe you just want somebody to kind of talk to get you through a tough time. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And here's the kick. If you get matched with a therapist that you're not really vibing with, you can switch anytime for no additional charge. So here's what you want to do. Go to betterhelp.com/allnba and you get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/ALLNBA. And you'll get 10% off your first month. All right, let's get back to All NBA Show. All right, back here, segment 2 of the All NBA Show, back half. Let's talk real quick about France. I was wrong about France. You see them. Here's one thing, actually, I'm going to preface this because I saw some people say, oh, they got killed in the exhibition games or so-and-so team got blown out in the group play. Because Jokic has been in Denver and I've now watched Eurobasket, World Cup, and Olympics through several cycles, I'm telling you, one of the things I love about FIBA, they say the regular season and the playoffs are different in the NBA. Group play and the elimination round are completely different in FIBA. In these short tournaments, teams will set the table in group play, take a loss, and then get to the elimination round, and that's where they will go with a crazy game plan. Well, France's was to not play Rudy Gobert and to use their two bigs, Lasort and Yabusele, as battering rams, baby Shaqs, and they both were incredible at it. I was wrong about them. Going into the medal round, I thought they had no chance against Canada. They beat them. They beat Germany, and they gave U.S. all they could handle. Were you as impressed as I was?
Very. I was very impressed by everything you just said. I was also just really impressed by their inability to be put away. They couldn't put them away. Every time you thought it was about to get 10, 12, 15, and then at that point it could be 25, they would make shots that had to be made in that moment, in that possession, to keep them in the game, to keep them within striking distance. I was just so impressed with their ability to get space on the perimeter, in some cases off the dribble or off dribble handoff game, and get to spots and make shots. Super impressed. Yabusele was great the entire tournament, and he's really impressive. Like, as big as he is, and like it's just as much mass as he is very quick off his feet and explosive, and plays much bigger than his height would indicate. He was fantastic.
He dunked on LeBron, the hardest dunk of LeBron's career.
And LeBron didn't argue that one very much because he knew he got there a little bit late and turned his body. That doesn't happen to LeBron James throughout his career. How many times has LeBron James, gotten there late and got dunked on to the point where he fell to the ground and on a 3-point play? I mean, very few times. And so that was impressive. Cornier, the way he shot the basketball the last couple games for them, super impressive. Obviously, Wembanyama. Listen, one of the things that's impressive about France, look at their quarterfinal game and their semifinal win. How little he did offensively. Wembanyama had 18 points total in those two games. If you go into the medal round, you're in the final 8, and you say, okay, Wembanyama is going to score 18 points in the next 2 games combined. Like, even if you would say, well, how are they going to win the first game? First of all, he scores 7 points. How are they going to win that game? That told you a lot about the rest of their roster. So the fact that they were able to win games when he wasn't shooting the ball particularly well or putting the ball in the basket, super impressive. I mean, they didn't really even utilize Rudy Gobert, who's the most accomplished NBA player on their roster. They didn't really utilize him, and they were still able to just go toe-to-toe with these teams. And I think Canada, that's got to be probably the biggest disappointment. Would you agree, of the teams that were left in the final 8, right? I mean, they had 10 NBA players, and they had some big-time firepower on that team. And they had some guys that really not play well at all offensively when they had to.
What do you think went wrong for Canada?
You just go look at their individual performances. They had very little consistency. Despite all of those guys that can score, they had very little consistency throughout their roster from game to game. Team USA got that. They got that from LeBron. They got that from Kevin Durant. They got that, I thought, from Anthony Edwards for the most part. They got that from Booker. Curry wasn't very good the first 4 games, and then just went crazy the last 2. But their top, the other top guys and other guys on their roster were very consistent in their role and what they were doing from game to game. Canada didn't get that. And then in the big game, when they had to have it, they just really struggled shooting the basketball. And they had some guys just flat out play far beneath what they needed to give them a chance. And Jamal Murray would be one of the guys at the top of that list probably.
I mean, I think he probably is at the top of the list. When I watched Canada, they reminded me a lot of Team USA from 2002 to 2006. The dark era of Team USA, where it was a lot of talent, but the FIBA game is so different that it really takes a strategy going in, and guys have to buy into role and understand the role. And Canada, it didn't seem like they knew who their top guys were. You were talking earlier about Tatum and reputation. Well, Jamal Murray entered the tournament with reputation of, okay, he's probably our second best player. He's a champion. He's done all these things, but he wasn't the second best player on that team. And I think there was just a little confusion about, okay, how do these pieces fit? It was talent, but the roles weren't very clearly defined and the pecking order wasn't clearly defined. And I think they just had to go through this one to kind of learn that lesson, that tough lesson. And they have enough talent and young talent. They should be good for years to come, but they're going to have to change their approach, in my opinion, including figure out who does what. What about Serbia? So France gave U.S. a run. I thought U.S. was a little slept walk a little bit through that game and then kind of got caught at the end and then put them away. But the Serbia game, I think that was one where I just think Serbia punched and played incredibly well. And
Yeah.
like we said at the start, the U.S. had to rise to the occasion, and they did. But Serbia, to me, was probably, I don't want to disrespect France here, but I thought Serbia was the second most impressive team that I saw in this when they lose to the USA twice. But what did you think of what you saw from them? And I guess I'll even say from Jokic in particular.
I mean, I thought Jokic was spectacular, and again, like just his playmaking and physical presence in the paint. He again proved if you don't provide enough help and you give him enough single coverage of space, there's not a defender in the world that can stop him from getting the shot he wants and scoring when he wants. He controls the game with his passing, his dribble handoff game, his screening game. You can't even overstate like what he meant to that team and that roster to be in that position to play, to have the tournament that they had, first of all, and they ended with the bronze medal. But the game they played the U.S., I mean, that's a win up. They're up, double digits, 7 minutes to go. That game is in their hands to win the game. And Jokic, with you look at the rest of that roster, like how imposing Jokic was and making those guys that much better and their belief, first of all, and then just what he does on the court and the boxes he checks to give you a chance. Very impressed with them. And, Bogdanovic is very good, as I knew he would be in this tournament. Jovic was okay. If he was a little bit better, maybe, Serbia ends up in the gold medal game. So for that roster, they absolutely maxed out. And I think that's why you saw the emotion and the relief on the part of Jokic after he won the bronze medal, man. It was very important to him to be able to get a medal when you look at the level of competition, because I don't think necessarily their roster has the upside beyond their top 2 or 3 guys that have NBA experience. Their roster doesn't have as much upside, I think, as some of these other teams. And just looking at the athletic ability that some of these teams had with their supporting cast, but Jokic makes the difference. And that's why you're able to go toe-to-toe with Team USA and be in a position to win. And I think they had an open 3 up 2 with 2 minutes to go.
Oh, so yeah, such a
if they make that shot, it's a wide open, naked right wing 3 from a shooter, and they go up 5. I don't know, man. That's going to feel a lot different. 2 minutes to go up 5. I'm not saying USA wouldn't have still won the game, but I thought after letting that lead get away, man, that was still their opportunity. This wide open look, go up 5, kind of calm everybody down, and then maybe you get a couple of stops, and maybe they end up in a gold medal game. But the Team USA, they rose to the occasion in an incredible way. The greatness was forced out of them, and they did what was required.
The Jokic did something I've only seen Wilt Chamberlain do, which is average more minutes than 40. Because that first game went to overtime, so he played 43 and a half minutes, and then every other game he only rested 90 seconds. So he ends at like 40.
I'm curious, what was their plus minus in the little bit of time he didn't play? Because he did come off the floor a few times.
I think they actually won. He came off the floor in the U.S. game for 90 seconds, and I think they actually won those 90 seconds. It was like one was for like 15 seconds, and I think Serbia just scored a basket, and then once was for like a minute. But nonetheless, I mean, it was basically 3 possessions that he wasn't on the court for the entire game. And that was true of all 3 rounds. Like I said, 43 and a half minutes the first game, 38 and a half. It's just insane. And I think that was really, I mean, look, I think Serbia maxed out what they're capable of. The U.S.'s best punch is just better than Serbia's best punch, and we saw that. But one of the things you notice is that Serbia had a really good unit, but they didn't have enough behind that. And what you saw from Team USA was they were just wave after wave after wave. And I think Serbia did not grab a rebound in the fourth quarter of the semifinal game. And that things like rebounds, threes, they didn't make a 3 as well. that's fatigue. And you just saw with Serbia, man, that game, if it was 35 minutes, they would have had the plan, but they didn't have anything else. I was impressed with them. And then I was impressed with Australia. And Patty Mills, another one of these guys that is a role player in the NBA. He goes there and he gets to be Steph Curry for a little bit, and he was up for the challenge in that first game.
He always is, man. He's fun to watch in these tournaments because he has a different vibe about him. The way his teammates respect him and look up to him, he has all kinds of freedom. So his confidence level's off the charts as soon as he runs out of the tunnel. He was great, as he normally is in these type of events. I get he was very good.
Yeah,
so
Giddy was great.
Australia was impressive, man. I thought Germany was impressive too. Germany, Schroeder was very, very good. Franz Wagner was a little bit up and down, but for the most part played pretty well. Obst, I thought, played pretty well at times. So
Our guy.
I thought Germany represented themselves pretty well. But I tell you this, I said before the tournament started, I did NBA Today hit, and I said, they asked me who was the biggest threat to the United States, and I said France on the air. And then as the tournament was on, that was before anybody played any pool games. I started watching the pool games, and I was thinking like, it probably isn't them actually. And I thought Canada probably was going to be that, but lo and behold, France ended up being the last team standing, man. And they had some guys that a lot of people watching did not know who they were, that made a big, big statement in the way that they played throughout this entire tournament.
In 1992, it was said of the Dream Team that they brought the game international, and it inspired a whole generation of players. And here we are, 30 years later, but it really started right after the Dream Team, where we started to see international players more and more. I actually think that this Team USA, with LeBron James and Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, but also with France and with Serbia and with Germany and all these other teams, I think that this was a great Olympics for the game of basketball. Because I think that it was, one, that USA team was so inspiring, but two, the other teams that were able to go toe-to-toe with them is also inspiring. And I just think that we're going to really see the effects of this, maybe not in the next year or two, but I think in the coming decade, you're going to see a lot of people that this tournament made an impact, and the Olympics are only going to get better. And it brings me to an interesting comment from Dennis Schroeder after the bronze medal game, of which they lost, and he was asked about the difference between FIBA and the NBA. Do we have that clip to play, Ali? Are we able to pull that up?
European basketball, I think, is the more, I gotta be careful here. I think it's European basketball is no entertainment. It's straight IQ basketball, straight coaching, and really, really high IQ guys who know how to play the game. And Serbia, Greece, Spain, France, Germany. There's so many teams out there who knows how to play, who is athletic, and I think it's a lot of people from Europe in the NBA who make some noise. Slovenia with Luka Doncic, one of the best players in the world. Of course, the USA is one of the best leagues in the world, or is the best league in the world, but European, they come in for sure.
So I found this to be a great quote. I think that it's hilarious that he said, I want to be careful with my words, because he knew that this could be interpreted in the wrong way. But I felt what he was trying to say was that FIBA is different from the NBA for the things he laid out. The rules allow it to be more of a team game that's less sexy. In the NBA, you got two different guys scored 70 points this year. You get guys that score 60. It's more star driven. I think that's what he meant for entertainment, but maybe more strategic at the FIBA level. Kevin Durant took offense to that. I think you have it, Ali. He posted out entertainment and IQ. What's funny about this is KD's right. This is what made Team USA so incredible. They're athletic, more athletic than anyone. They shot better than anyone. And in this tournament, they were forced to be as smart as the smartest teams. He's right, entertainment and IQ. What he's wrong about is I don't think Dennis Schroeder was saying anything different. I think if he was asked, he would have been like, yeah, US is also great, high IQ team. But what did you think of that interaction, those two comments?
Completely agree. I don't think Dennis Schroeder meant it in that way. First of all, he's not the kind of guy really to say something like that in that way, where it's derogatory toward Team USA as if they're not a high IQ team. I don't think that's what he was trying to say. I think what he's really trying to say is this. In FIBA basketball, because it's a shorter game, the style of the game, there are just fewer opportunities to waste possessions. You can't survive wasted possessions. It's just that much more important every trip. Whereas in a 48-minute game and the style of the game where shots are taken earlier in the clock, like in an NBA game, there can be a number of possessions in a game that are like not great possessions. Guys take really quick shots with a hand up or whatever, where the ball didn't really move much. You see that every night in the NBA. And then obviously you're going to get to winning time in the game. It's going to be different. Playoffs are different even than the regular season in that regard. And in this situation, 40-minute game, there are just no opportunities to do that. Each possession is so maximized that you have to take care of the ball. You have to make sure you get good shots. There's a premium on that. So I think that really is kind of more how I took that and what Schroeder's saying. So you have to have guys on the floor that understand how to play, cut, move, screen, move it, shoot it, and take care of the basketball and make sure to get a quality possession. And because there's just such an emphasis on it, because there's a premium on your possessions, and the scores of the game indicate that. I think that's really how I interpreted it. And the other thing is this, Adam, beyond the top guys on these international rosters, these other teams, foreign countries that we played, there's a drop off athletically in the second half of their rosters. That's not the case with Team USA. So because of that, those guys that are in the rotation for these teams, they have to play a certain way that is going to be more like what you would describe as like heady or like fundamental or whatever it may be, because they're not going to rely on blazing quickness or athletic ability or some of the things that, the secondary rotational players for Team USA have that could just come in and immediately do something athletic with their defense or their speed or their, getting on the glass. It's different. The rosters are made up differently. So these guys have to play a certain way in order to be able to be in a competitive game with a team as loaded as Team USA. So I don't think he was trying to disrespect Team USA. I think he was actually just more trying to complement the level of play on these other teams, including the team that he played for, Germany.
So I did a documentary a couple of years back called 100 Invisible Threads. It's free on YouTube. People can watch. It's 1 hour long, and it goes through the history of basketball in Serbia, but before that, Yugoslavia. And one of the things I found interesting in researching that is back in the 50s, when Yugoslavia was first saying, hey, basketball is something, we have a bunch of tall people here in our country. We should make this a national sport. Let's invest in it. One of the things they did is they assigned their coaches to go abroad, go to the U.S. and learn from the U.S. coaches. Red Auerbach, let's try to get exhibition games, but also let's get you on staffs for these colleges so that you could learn from the great American coaches, the great Italian coaches. It reminds me a little bit of the UFC. The original idea of the UFC was it's all these different martial artists, and you have a taekwondo expert, and you have a jiu-jitsu expert, and a boxing expert, and let's put them together, and let's all learn from the different styles. And what I loved about this Olympics is that this was the Team USA. USA is by far the best basketball nation on earth. It's not close. They have the best talent, the best infrastructure, and everything else. But that doesn't mean there isn't lessons that if you're a basketball purist that you can learn from these other schools. And I think how I interpret Schroeder and what I loved about this Olympics was, yes, US was the best. Yes, they proved that. And yes, they rose to the occasion of both entertainment, IQ, individual skill, and everything else. But there's a lot that I'm sure those guys also learned from competing against these other schools of basketball, the same way the best MMA fighters go into a fight and take something from the person they just went through. And to me, that's what made this Olympics special. And that's what makes the Olympics, the concept of the Olympics, special. All these cultures, languages, and people come together and compete and learn something from each other. And to me, that's why this is a great story. It was a great Olympics. And that's how I choose to look at this entire experience.
Yeah, I'm gonna. My final thought on all of this is this, and I'm a firm believer in this. Like NBA players that play for Team USA, right, their legacies are not really defined by this, to the extent that the players on the international teams are. Yep, and I know 100%. They've got NBA players too, right? And I understand that the Jokic ultimately is, if the way we view him here is going to be on NBA championships, MVPs, all-star appearances, all league, all that. But in his own country, if you're a part of a team that can break through and win, you become this legendary mythical figure. And because of what happens in an international competition like the Olympics, that's not the case for Team USA. Their legacies are built on what they do in the NBA. So I really felt that all along, and I believe that. But here's the exception. When it goes down the way that it did, you can actually create another layer to your legacy in international competition that I don't think you could have if they just went in there and they won a sort of a ho-hum 18-point game in the gold medal game, and they won a
Right.
16-point game in the semifinals, and it was like really balanced across the roster. And it would be just like, okay, ho-hum, we won, yay, USA. And then we get, okay, when does training camp start? Immediately when it's over. But when you give us something that they just gave us, a semifinal that had that much drama, that they had to dig that deep for, that had the greatness of LeBron on display, Curry on display, Durant on display late in that game. And then Curry gives us this moment in a tight game against France, and he closes it out the way that he did. It's the rare case, Adam, that an NBA player playing for Team USA can actually add to their legacy in international competition because of how it played out. It's one of the rare times it's ever been the case. More often than not, it's just like, oh my goodness, don't lose, because you're going to carry that for you the rest of your life. But if you win, it's like, okay, great, good job. Now let's get back to the NBA. But when you do it like this, I actually do think now this is something that will come up when you talk about Steph Curry, when you talk about
100%.
LeBron. This team, these moments, the way this played out, and normally that's not really the case. You get to that way down the line when you start talking about these players. Oh, yeah, that's right. He also has 3 gold medals. You'll get to it at some point. This kind of changed that. This is going to be something you're going to be talking about near the front when you talk about Steph Curry and LeBron James. And that's what's so cool about what just happened, because it's very hard for Team USA players to have that moment to that extent that it actually adds to the way we view them overall in this country.
Well said. Hit that outro music for us, Allie. Legs, it was fun. We got a little extra basketball in the summer. We don't always get that, but we got a little extra. Now we get a little bit of a break, though. We'll be back in a couple weeks, or several weeks, I should say. And if something pops up, if there's an emergency Curry trade or LeBron trade or something unforeseen, we'll hop on here and we'll do an emergency podcast. But we're going to take a couple weeks off and get ready for the 2024-25 season here and kind of enjoy our summer. Legs, it was great seeing you. It's great talking hoops with you. And I hope you enjoy a little time off.
Yeah, we'll do, man. I'll catch up with you soon. Great recap of the Olympics. Everybody have a great summer. We'll be back on as needed.
Everybody, make sure if you're not subscribed, subscribe so you don't miss when we are back. Leave a like if you haven't already. We'll see you next time.